All right, this is a fairly big day in the social media history of Ross Kaminsky because I just see an indication on my Twitter account that someone named Ann Coulter just followed me. And what are the odds that we've got Ann Coulter on our VIP line right now? I haven't spoken to you in a while, Ann. Thanks so much for being back. I really appreciate it.
Good to talk to you. I'm trying to I'm tweeting as we talk that I'm coming up on your show. I hope it's yes. I did spell K how right.
There you go. And that's fantastic. It's great to be with you again. It's been a few months, and I've got your book in my hand. Believe it or not, I've read about 2/3 of it already, and I only say believe it or not.
Isn't it fun?
It is fun. I mean, your writing is always fun. And that's your shtick, right? And I mean that in a good way.
Yes,
you're way more
I am
fun
a writer,
than
not a TV talk show host who gets a ghostwriter to put out a piece of crap book.
Indeed. Now, let me just start off with one thing that struck me, and you tell me if I'm interpreting this wrong. So your previous book was really kind of a full-throated endorsement of President Trump. This book, and I've followed you, over the months, and you've been, I would say, a little frustrated with the president from time to time, especially on immigration and the wall and things like that. So your new book, Resistance is Futile, the subtitle, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind, is much more about Trump opponents than about the president himself. I mean, that's how I'm reading it.
Yes, in fact, it's like Slander, if you remember my second book, Slander Part 2. It is a slashing attack on the media because they really have lost their minds. And by the way, if they would listen, and they wouldn't, if they would flip through this book, it actually contains excellent advice, which is to go after Trump on the stuff he's actually done, rather than running off on these, their wishful thinking. Because every night, I mean, as I say at the beginning of one of the chapters, I'm not sure if you've gotten to it yet, it ought to be really hard to write a book about current events because things are always changing. Nope. They really aren't. I watch MSNBC every night, and you could, and I obviously went through Nexus with a fine-toothed comb. It's basically the same thing. It's the noose is tightening, and maybe he'll flip. There's nothing to flip on, and as you know by now, and I think it'll be my column this week. One crucial part, and the whole thing isn't about Russia. It's about how crazy they are on everything, on Charlottesville, on the Access Hollywood tape, the Pope, Olympic athletes, Hillary Clinton herself claiming to be part of the resistance. But on the Russia stuff, I mean, naturally, I guess, our side tends to be reactive and will just respond to the day's events, but it's really boring. Most Americans realize it's stupid, and I think you need the bigger picture, and at least one part of the bigger picture is this is just another crazy excuse made by Hillary Clinton. It's a long line of excuses she has made throughout her career. Every time she's caught in a scandal, every time she's done something wrong, she needs to deflect, and she starts accusing someone else either of conspiring against her, as she did going back to Jennifer Flowers. It was supposed to be some, it's this evil man in Arkansas politics who's inventing this stuff. He's just obsessed with my husband. That was like the first inkling of the vast right-wing conspiracy. Which was, of course, about Monica Lewinsky. There was the White House travel office for the youngsters in the audience. When Lady Defarge came into the White House, she instantly fired these long-serving, decades and decades, White House travel office to make room for her Hollywood friends who had just started up a travel business. It was so sleazy and corrupt and Marie Antoinette-ish, if Marie Antoinette had been what liberals say she was, which she wasn't, but that's a footnote. That there was a lot of public outcry. So what does she do? She accuses the head of the travel office, Billy Dale, there's a blast from the past, of embezzlement. She's always turning and blaming someone else, and this was first launched when the WikiLeaks. That was the scandal. It was very bad for the Democrats. Every Democrat on Capitol Hill, they were in a terror. So Robbie Mook goes on, the really tough interviewer, George Stephanopoulos, and launches the Russia conspiracy theory that Russia was trying to help elect Trump. Now, at the time, and this is why it's lucky Ann has a Nexus account, the entire media, including the New York Times, scoffed at Robbie Mook's claim that blaming. No one has ever done this, even at the height of the Cold War. One presidential opponent has not accused another opponent of conspiring with Russia. It wasn't really taken seriously. You'll remember she brought it up in the debates. Trump laughed about it. Even with the media 100% behind Hillary, they just did not take it seriously and mostly did her a favor by putting it on page B14. They quoted cyber experts saying this is nonsense. They quoted Russia scholars saying this is nonsense. No, the media didn't begin to take the Russia conspiracy theory seriously until November 8th, 2016, and we've been living with this hysteria ever since.
Yeah, and you know what? One other thing, it's just tangential to what you said, but one of the ones that jumped out at me most about Hillary Clinton's excuses, and this doesn't really tie into Trump, but that recent one where she blamed married white women for taking orders from their husbands. Can you imagine, like, if she said that to my wife, what my wife would say back?
Yes. Well, when she lost to Obama in 2008, she blamed the sexism of the media.
Well, one of the things
at MSNBC.
One of the things that you say early in your book, Resistance is Futile. Should I say futile or futile? What do you like better?
Well, I usually say futile, but I'm with you. I'm kind of nervous because when you say it as a book title, it sounds like FEUDAL.
Yes,
right?
Yes, exactly. And
so for
also,
this, I may start saying futile.
Are you a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy at all?
Oh, I haven't read it for an awfully long time.
Well, when the Vogons capture people, they tell them resistance is futile.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So I always think that way. Okay, so you say early in the book, and I agree with you, that one of the interesting things that's gone on with all this is that the Democrats used to be the one who were cool. And I'm quoting, I thought the whole thing about being cool was to be cool. Follow up on that a little.
Yes, they've become such little Nazi block watchers. And I just remember, living in New York, that was sort of the pose of the intellectual, that nothing would bother them, and the rubes, they're getting excited about something. That was the pose of like the coolest, hippest comedians, the Sarah Silverman types. Now, oh my gosh, they're the ones who are totally hysterical about every Trump tweet. It's the end of the world. It's an existential crisis. The ones who are demanding firings right, left, the blue noses, shocked by Trump using a bad word on a secretly taped and illegally revealed tape, that Access Hollywood tape. And it's conservatives who are sitting back, refusing to freak out over every little thing. We're the cool ones. They've become the man in the business suit going to the big office.
Yeah. And they absolutely won't stop about it. I want to move on. Let's see. I'm looking a little further ahead in the book, talking about election meddling stuff. And you raise some issues that I'd only heard about a little bit. You get into much more interesting detail about some things that George Soros has done. I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Oh, yes. That's one of my favorite sections right at the beginning. This is why I say you really need to take the sweeping view. And before I get to Soros specifically, the basic point is we still have no evidence that Russia interfered with the election. They refuse to give us that. All they will do is try to nag us to death. Point two, even if they did, so what? So do lots of other countries. We intervene in their affairs all the time. There is absolutely no evidence that anything they did could have affected the election. The election went the way anyone, probably you and I, predicted it would go. The large industrial Midwest states really liked Trump's plan of tearing up the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, bringing manufacturing back to America, building a wall. It's not like suddenly California and New York flipped or they were hacking voting machines. But on the earlier point there, it's always hard to make that argument. It's like back to Clarence Thomas, where the argument was he didn't do it, and if he did, it's no big deal. Everyone got stuck on it's no big deal, and poor Clarence Thomas, I think, has gone down in history with people thinking he actually did it. He didn't do it, which was talk dirty to somebody in the office. George Soros has been intervening aggressively, spending $1 billion in the affairs of Russian satellites for 20 years now, often with the assistance of the United States State Department. to act like, I mean, there are a lot of countries, liberals and George Soros in particular, like to go around talking about how George Bush, or mostly George Bush, because of Bush, the rest of the world hates us. They hate us with his cowboy diplomacy. No, if anyone is responsible for the rest of the world hating us, it's billionaire George Soros. Broke the Bank of England, impoverishing British pensioners to when, Indonesia's financial crisis, they blame 100% on George Soros. As you may know, Soros and his groups have just been thrown out of Hungary. The recently re-elected president, one of his campaign planks was to run against George Soros. And the government has not only, he does live here, he benefits from the United States of America, and it was often with the assistance of the State Department. It's interesting the way he would overturn elections is about the way they're trying to overturn the 2016 election. He'd fund phony pollsters saying that the candidate he wanted to win should have won. Therefore, the election must have been rigged. He would fund youth protests to run out in the street. These were all the Orange Revolution, the Rose Revolution, those things. And then the State Department would come in and say, well, you're going to have to rerun the election. What? And now we're complaining about somebody interfering in our election?
All right, so let me just push back slightly on something. First of all, I agree. George Soros is pure evil, and the world would be much better off when he goes. What I have a little bit of trouble with is the idea that just because we or our allies or might try to interfere, if you want to use that word, in other people's elections from time to time, that we shouldn't be pissed off or try to stop the Russians.
Oh no, you're right. You're right. What I'm saying
some people do talk about it that way.
No, you're absolutely right. What I'm saying is, number one, stop acting like this is a 9/11 attack. Mm-hmm. Number two, this is, the worst they're claiming. If you get to the Russian bots on Facebook chapter, although that's toward the end, you haven't gotten there yet. Give me a break. Whomever was doing this, they seem to be trolling and not changing a single vote. I think the media kind of had its finger on the scale in this election too. Quite obviously, Trump voters were not listening to any media. The idea that they saw, an ad on Facebook and you could get them to testify, oh no, I didn't vote for Trump because he was going to tear up these bad trade deals or deport illegal aliens and get the heroin out of my community. I voted for him because I saw something on Facebook about the Pizzagate conspiracy. Mm-hmm. Oh, come on, give me a break. It doesn't even compare. And third, finally, how about we all agree? We'll stop interfering in their elections, and that means you, George Soros, and you guys stop fiddling around with ours. And by the way, it's far from only Russia, as I also mentioned. Other countries are far more involved in our elections. I'm talking to you, Mexico.
And actually, and John Bolton was asked this question on Sunday, and he mentioned Iran, North Korea, and China all as potential threats to our elections. Now, speaking a little further on in the book, and because this is a huge thing in the news, like each and every day, I want to at least get a couple minutes with you on the whole Muller thing. I was reading the chapter "Bonfire of the Non-Entities," which is an interesting point about the people that Mueller has indicted have mostly been kind of nearly irrelevant to the entire thing. But what do you have to say, not just in the book, but also thinking forward about the McGahn stuff you just learned, about what's going to happen with the Mueller investigation?
Well, on the bonfire of the non-entities, the one sort of most important point I'd make is the whole Russia conspiracy theory would be crazy enough that an American political campaign was conspiring with Russia to throw elections or to throw a presidential election by posting, Facebook ads. It would be crazy enough if you were talking about, like, the Ted Cruz campaign, the Marco Rubio campaign, because those campaigns at least had campaign managers, a staff, lots of pollsters. They had donors. They had what is recognizable as a political campaign. For the first year, Trump had none of that. For the first year, it was him, Corey Lewandowski, and Hope Hicks. Trump's plan for winning the White House: I'll fly around the country, give speeches in 10,000-person arenas, promoting popular ideas. People will like my ideas and they will vote for me. Ha, that's what worked. I guess you don't need the pollsters. Just push popular ideas, politicians. So every time the media dashes out to say that, the secret link in the Russian collusion, the mastermind of it was Carter Page. No, it was George Papadopoulos. They always have to come back a few weeks later with their tail between their legs saying, actually, Carter Page never had a conversation with Trump. Sorry, that was a misdirection. But what do we expect will happen? Well, I do think it is absolutely impossible for Mueller to come forward and say, okay, we've investigated, Trump is clear. Boy, his name will be mud. I mean, you see how these people like John Brennan, whom the left, and for good reason, not only the left, wanted to boil in oil, up until he started tweeting out vicious, flowery, fruity, nasty things about Trump. It's, a happy Cinderella story. Now they love him again. But he's lied under oath and about, or rather, I don't know if it was under oath, but has been a proved liar about the CIA spying on the Democrats, which he denied to Andrea Mitchell. I mean, just a really, really, really blemished record about lying. John Brennan has, but now they love him. So Mueller, his best hope is to get fired and be a resistance martyr. He'll have to come up with something, but since there was no Russian collusion, and based on his indictment so far, it's just, fantasy land. As soon as the Russians showed up to defend one of the indictments, the special counsel goes running and saying, well, we're not quite ready for trial yet. So he'll come up with something, and to allow the media to continue being hysterical, but it will be frivolous and irrelevant. He cannot. The one thing I know he cannot do is say we've investigated and cleared Trump.
Right, and I think the public will see that. I think this is actually going to probably play out. Well, it already is probably playing out in Trump's favor. I
agree.
I got one last question for you, Ann. Sock, shoe, shoe, or sock, shoe, shoe? Do you put on? Do you put on? Do you put on both socks and then both shoes, or one sock and a shoe and then the other sock and the other shoe?
Ooh, this is an important question. Unless I'm skiing, I don't wear socks.
Wow. You must live in California.
Exactly.
So that would be shoe, and then that's it. I don't know if we've gotten that answer before. The one and only Ann Coulter, her new book, Resistance is, I'm going to say, futile. And you can order it on Amazon right now. It comes out tomorrow or the next day, officially? Tomorrow. So cool to talk to you the day before the book comes out. Thanks for your time, as always, Ann. I always enjoy talking to you, and I wish you lots of success with Resistance is Futile.
Thank you. Great to talk to you, Ross. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.